Today in the Overwhelm Solution Challenge, we are talking about boundaries. If you've been around for a while on my YouTube channel, if you've checked out my other videos, you know I talk about boundaries a lot. I think they are one of the key factors to creating work-life balance while working in public health. Boundaries can actually be much simpler than you think, which is why I talk about them all the time, and why they are a whole day in the Overwhelm Solution Challenge. If you're new here, this Overwhelm Solution Challenge I did is a 5-day week-long challenge in 2025 where over 600 women joined us. And now I'm bringing those teachings, those lessons directly to you here on YouTube. We've already covered the first 3 lessons. Today we're talking about boundaries, and next week is going to be the final lesson of the Overwhelm Solution Challenge. After today, if you've missed any in the past, we talked about how to reduce your overwhelm, how to create more time, how to get more work done in less time. You can go back and check those out. If you're new here, I'd love for you to join us. Hit subscribe so you'll be notified of any upcoming videos so I can help you reduce your stress, your overwhelm, create more calm and work-life balance in your life. Without further ado, let's get into the Overwhelm Solution Challenge, talking about building boundaries that last. I'm so glad you all made it here for a couple reasons. It is almost serendipitous, we could say, that this challenge is happening this week with all the chaos happening in the field. I'm really glad you're here. I'm prioritizing yourself by being here because what you're learning this week is how you are going to be able to survive and navigate what is happening in public health and what's going to continue to happen, what's the ripple effects, and how all of this is going to unfold. Public health itself is not going to get easier to navigate if you don't do anything, right? There's so much out of our control, but it will get easier to navigate the more you learn these skills and tools and the more you implement them. As I've been saying all week, you can learn all the knowledge and the skills, but if you're not implementing them, they're not going to make a change. So that's why I'm so glad all of you are here today, participating in the live masterclass today and doing the daily challenges. Those of you who have been engaged during this week, you have seen shifts. You've seen shifts in your awareness and how you've been feeling. If this is your first live session, welcome. I'm so glad you're here. I don't want you to stop participating. I know we're kind of over the hump. This can be towards the weekend. We want to our brain says, oh, we've done enough. I've checked in, I've done this. You've done an amazing job. And there's so much more you can learn and so much more growth you can have. So I want to encourage you to continue to show up, to participate in these live sessions, and to do the daily challenges. Yesterday, we talked about how to create more free time. You really learned how your thoughts and feelings drive how you are using your free time. So we use some examples of if you're feeling worried or you're feeling guilty, how that can lead you to working more or thinking about work more instead of being present, instead of enjoying your time off. And we talked about how this is really this result of chasing enough, feeling like you've never done enough, which can push you to overwork and can steal your precious time. And changing this actually starts with you deciding ahead of time, I've done enough, I have enough time, I'm good enough, whatever it may be. Because feeling accomplished, feeling proud comes from our thoughts, not our tasks. When you believe you've done enough, when you believe you've done a good job, you actually end up using your free time in the way you want. It makes you in charge of your free time rather than that automatic thought process of worry and guilt and anxiety being in charge of it. And when that happens, you have more energy because you end up being rested. It restores you. It restores you mentally. It restores you physically, emotionally. We all know that. When we've truly checked out and we've truly taken time off and not worked and not been thinking about work, we feel more rested. And then when we get back to work, we make less mistakes. We're more focused. We're better able at problem solving. And we produce higher quality work. So we're going to talk a bit about boundaries today. Someone yesterday brought up boundaries and how yesterday's lesson was related to boundaries. That was spot on. We're going to dive more into that. But I want to do a little check-in. Yesterday was the first daily challenge where I offered you a practice thought. The days before, it was really just questioning your thoughts, really interacting with them, seeing what was going on. Yesterday was the first one where I'm offering you a thought to practice. And your challenge was to practice this thought, maybe I have done enough. Whether it was midday or at the end of the day or in the evening. I want you to tell me in the chat, what did you notice? Was it difficult? Did your brain have a tantrum? Was it hard to believe? Did you feel some relief? Did it redirect you? What happened when you practiced this thought? There's no right or wrong answer. Drop in the chat what you noticed. I did not believe it. Did your brain argue back? Did you feel resistance in your body? Tell me more. That's very common. I missed yesterday's, had to watch today, but I immediately thought, oh, that's an option. Oh, I love that. Right? Something our brain doesn't even present to us as a possibility. I do tell myself that it's comforting on crazy days when all my carefully laid plans go haywire. Yes. Good observation. It worked pretty well, but not under big deadlines at the moment, so easier to believe it. Okay, that's such a good reflection, right? And this is really important. Our thoughts are dynamic. They're not fixed, right? So sometimes depending on the challenge we are facing, the thought we're practicing might need to shift. So that's such a good example. Like this thought might work on it when you're facing certain challenges, but not others. So that's such good awareness. I'm glad you brought that up. It helped. I ended up working late, but I finally did stop and did what I wanted to instead. Okay, that is such a great example. We are not going to all or nothing. We're not going to perfectionism with these tools. We want to make small shifts, right? So that's actually, if you were in my coaching program, and you came in to a session and you told me that, I would say, oh my gosh, that's a win. That's a celebration because that is a small shift. That's what we're doing. We're building small shifts. Okay, so let's talk about boundaries. We're going to build on this. Thank you all for reflecting. Boundaries are intentional decisions you make for yourself. And the hardest part of setting boundaries isn't other people, which we'll talk about more in a second. It's actually our brain. Surprise, surprise. If you've been here all week, that shouldn't surprise you. And the thoughts we think that create guilt or shame or fear that come up around boundaries. I will say after doing this for many years, if someone were to ask me, like, what is the number one skill for reducing stress and you can only pick one, I would say working on boundaries. That truly is one of the key core foundations I teach in my program. That really leads to reducing stress and creating work-life balance, which I think all of you know. Like many people in public health want to have more boundaries. We talk about it a lot. But to do that successfully and do it consistently, there is a missing piece that you probably haven't thought of we're going to talk about today. But before we do, I want you all to drop in the chat and tell me what makes setting boundaries or sticking to your boundaries feel hard for you. There's no judgment, there's no right or wrong, but what comes up for you in the context of your work and your life? What makes it difficult? Let me know what your experience is. Okay, I'm letting people down, my heart, worried about disappointing others. All very, very common. What else? What else gets in the way? What else makes it challenging? When you try to set boundaries and the person you're trying to set them with counters, yeah, other people's reactions. We're going to talk about that today, so I'm glad you've brought that up. What else makes it challenging? What makes it feel hard? I may come across as selfish. Okay. Yeah, what other people might think of you. Other people act as if I'm the bad guy. Okay, again, other people's reactions. So we have some themes here, like what other people might be feeling, how they might be reacting. Okay, we're going to talk about all of that. But first, I want to talk about some boundary basics. Some of these might not be new to you, but I want you to listen with a beginner's mind, okay? Because I want you to take it in as if this is the first time you've heard some of these, so we're all on the same page. First, boundaries are for you and no one else. They are something you set for yourself to manage your time, to prioritize your responsibilities, to protect your mental health. They are not about anyone else. Second, a boundary is not about changing others. It is about focusing on where you have control. Boundaries are not walls we put up and say, hey, you can't climb over this wall. Why? Well, it doesn't work because we can't control other people. That's why if you try to set a boundary from don't email me after 5 p.m., people typically still end up emailing you after 5 p.m. That happening is not them crossing your boundary. I hear this a lot. They crossed my boundary. No. No one can cross your boundary because a boundary is not for them. It's not a wall you put up against them. A boundary is for you. A boundary is about controlling your behavior, setting expectations for yourself about what you will do, what you will not do. So a boundary is, I'm not going to check email after 5 p.m. or I'm not going to respond to email after 5 p.m. That's all about you because you have control over your behaviors. Even if you manage someone, even if you're a parent, you know, those people still have free will. And even if you tell them to do something, it doesn't mean they will. And the good news is with boundaries, it doesn't have anything to do with anyone else. It has to do with you. Now, this is really important in public health. Setting boundaries doesn't mean you don't care. It actually helps you do your job better. And I will say right now with everything happening in public health, this is so important. This was similar during COVID, right? COVID was kind of the opposite problem to what we're having now, where it's like everyone was being required to work 80, 90 hours a week. And a lot of people felt like they couldn't set boundaries because it meant they didn't care. That's not true. And same thing now. So if you're working in public health and a lot of your team has been laid off or your department's shrinking and a lot more is being added to your plate, setting boundaries doesn't mean you don't care. It actually means you are setting yourself up for success to do your job well. Setting boundaries is a professional skill. It is not a sign you don't care or you aren't good at your job. It's just as important of a skill as running SAS code, as writing grants, as giving a performance review. Why? Because when you set boundaries, you ensure you have the time and energy to do your job and do it at a high level. And lastly, people respect those who manage their time well, and boundaries make that possible. We often fear, and I had this fear too, that when we set boundaries, people will judge us, people will be upset with us. The vast majority of people, when you set boundaries, actually have a lot more respect, and they typically want to know how you've done it, right? Because people respect those who manage their time well. And that's what setting boundaries is. It's becoming a master at time management. So when I was the assistant director for a HRSA funded center, when I was going through my burnout and I started implementing boundaries, I was so worried that not only I was going to get fired, because this was a new job too, who was I, the new person, to set all these boundaries, but I was worried people were going to think I didn't know how to do my job. And what ended up happening is I set my boundaries and I got better at it. And not only did things get easier and I caught up on my work, but some of you have heard this story. I had this senior researcher who had been there for 20 years stop me in the hall to ask me what I was doing because she recognized you're leaving on time. You seem happier than ever. You're on top of everything. Like, I'm drowning. How are you doing this? Why? Why did she stop me and ask me that? Because everyone in public health wants work-life balance. Just very few know how to actually create it. So when you actually learn how to create work-life balance, the vast majority of people do not judge you. They admire you. They want to learn from you. And what I have found in myself and coaching countless women is the small percentage of people that might be grouchy about it, that might be a little resentful. What lies under that is envy, that they wish they could do that. And it's just coming out as that kind of reactivity piece. So let's talk about what the cost is of not doing boundaries. This cycle, if you watched yesterday's or you're here live, should look familiar. You learned this cycle yesterday. It's the burnout cycle. And yesterday we talked about how this is a cycle you fall into when you haven't done enough. You fall into this same cycle when you are not setting boundaries or when you don't stick to your boundary and you don't leave work on time, you check email at night, you skip lunch to complete an assignment, whatever it may be. Then what happens? You overwork, just like we talked about yesterday. When you're overworked, you exhaust yourself. And then when you exhaust yourself, you produce low quality work. And then the cycle repeats over and over. But when it comes to boundary setting, one thing I want everyone to see here is what's really happening underneath is that it's people pleasing driving this cycle. People pleasing is the result of worrying about other people's thoughts and feelings over your own. The only reason we are not setting and honoring our boundaries, the ones we want or need in our life, is because we are people pleasing, because we are worried far too much about what other people will think, what other people will feel. And this makes a lot of sense. If you're a woman, if you've been socialized as a woman, you have been taught by the patriarchy to people please, that your job is to take care of everyone else, that their feelings are your job, you need to make everyone happy. If you work in helping profession in public health, we get this messages as well. Your job is to help everyone. You need to be a martyr to the cause. You need to make sure everyone's happy. So we get a lot of subtle messages that tells us our role is to people please. So it makes sense we end up in this cycle. And it also makes sense we don't want to upset people. We are helpers. We want to help people. So of course we don't want other people to be upset. But at what cost? What people pleasing does and what's really happening is people pleasing really is disguised as trying to be a good leader, as trying to be a good teammate, as trying to be a good professional, right? We kind of disguise it that way. Oh, I'm just helping them. They really need me. And it's well intended. But we aren't really acknowledging what's really happening is we are people pleasing. We are putting other people's thoughts and feelings above our own. We are avoiding the discomfort that might come from other people not agreeing with us. We are not having our own back and trusting ourselves and putting ourselves first. We are avoiding the discomfort we might feel based on other people's reactions when we put ourselves first. And the truth is, when we are in this cycle, we are not being a good leader. We are not being a good colleague. We are not being a good professional because we're overworking, we're exhausted, and we produce low quality work. None of those things make for a great leader, a great colleague, a great professional. So here's what this can look like, and this format should look familiar. This is a people-pleasing trap, which people-pleasing essentially is a thought. So let's say you set a boundary that you want to stay off emails or Teams messages at night, but your brain says they might think I'm selfish. And then because you're thinking that, you feel worried, not because of whatever your team says or whatever they do, but because your brain is telling you they might think I'm selfish. And when you think that and you feel worried, what happens? The actions you end up taking is I check emails, I'm on Teams, I'm not being present, I get sucked into work more, I struggle to sleep because I'm thinking about work and I'm dreading tomorrow. All of these actions are a result of your thinking, oh, they might think I'm selfish. How do we know? If you were thinking, I'm being a good role model by staying off email, they can figure this out on their own. They shouldn't be working either, so I'm going to walk the talk and show them. This can wait till tomorrow. If you were thinking any of those thoughts, and I'm not saying you have to think these, I'm just illustrating, you would not be feeling worried. You would not be overworking. Instead, you'd be feeling confident or certain or some other emotion that would help you use your free time for you to rest, to relax, to recharge. Another example. Let's say you want to say no to helping with another project, but your brain says, I don't want to hurt their feelings, and you feel guilty. This is one of the most common emotions that come up when it comes to setting boundaries. You do not feel guilty because of what your colleagues have said or what they might say. It's because you're thinking, I don't want to hurt their feelings. And when you think that and you feel guilty, it drives you to say yes, to then overwork yourself, exhaust yourself, skip your workouts. And eventually, many of us can relate to this, it leads to resenting your work or resenting your colleague or blaming your job for your burnout. And I want to point out something really important. This resent work, blame job piece. This people-pleasing trap, this burnout cycle, for everyone I have worked with, it leads to this place. And for me too, resentment, I was stuck in resentment for a long time, resenting my leaders, resenting the senior leadership, my boss, colleagues, so many people. You can resent your work, you can resent your team if you're a leader, your colleagues, and it leads you to blaming your job for stress and burnout. When the truth is, you have so much power to reduce your overwhelm and your stress that you are not using. This is why many people leave a job that they think is causing their stress and burnout, and they get a new job that maybe is more flexible. Maybe they do like their boss more, but they still end up stressed and burnt out and working 60 hours a week. And they still end up coming to my program. Why? Because they haven't changed their habits, their beliefs, their people pleasing. That creates a lot of the stress and burnout. Now, I want to be very clear. This does not mean we're denying any of the challenges in public health. We're not denying that there can be micromanaging bosses or that there's too high of workloads or there's a lot of challenges we're facing. Those things exist and they can contribute, of course, to stress and burnout. However, so can you. And while we can't control maybe our bosses or the policies or what's happening outside of us, the places where we are adding extra stress, extra work, extra exhaustion to ourselves, we can control and we can change. And this is great news. Because as I've said all week, if it was just a result of your job or your boss, you'd be screwed. Then there's nothing you can do. But because a lot of our own stress and burnout in this people-pleasing cycle is a result of what we're thinking and believing, we have so much power and agency to change it without waiting for anything outside of us to change. So this is really great news. So if you were thinking, and again, I'm not saying you have to think this way, I'm just illustrating. If instead of thinking, I don't want to hurt their feelings, you truly believed, I am more helpful to my organization when I'm not overworking. They can problem solve this without me. I know they're smart enough. I am setting a great example for my team, or I'm setting a great example for my kids. If you are believing any of those thoughts, you wouldn't be feeling guilty. You wouldn't be overworking. You wouldn't end up burnt out and resentful. And I'm illustrating all of this not to say you have to shift your thinking right away, but just for you to see where you have agency and power to shift it and how positive of a response that will be on your life. But first, before we talk about that, I want to contextualize some things. Why do we get in this people pleasing cycle in the first place? Why do we get into this kind of burnout and stress cycle in the first place? It really is the result of the way modern society has conditioned all of us. All of you here, myself included, everyone. We have been conditioned to put ourselves last, to not say no, and to not set boundaries. Specifically, systems of oppression, the patriarchy, hustle culture, white supremacy, ableism, have trained us all to feel guilt and shame when we try to prioritize ourselves. And this comes through subtle, direct, and indirect messages that we receive in school, from our family, from the media, from the workplace, from our religion, and all over. So, for example, the patriarchy really tells women that their job is to do everything for everyone else, including making sure everyone's happy. Hustle culture tells all of us the only way to success and fulfillment and happiness is to overwork and exhaust yourself. Ableism tells us push past your mental, emotional, and physical limits beyond your capacity, no matter what. White supremacy wants you to work 10 times harder without 10 times the reward. And we get these messages from all over. And that's what can make it difficult to set boundaries, to say no to people, to stop people pleasing, especially when you don't recognize that this is the root of it all. Because we need to address this root and undo this internal socialization to really feel comfortable about saying no, setting boundaries, and stop people pleasing. And there's one very important reason, and I think this week highlights it more than ever, that this work is necessary. When you don't prioritize yourself, systems of oppression win. When you put yourself last, when you always say yes, what happens? You exhaust yourself, you burn out. This is exactly what systems of oppression want. Exactly what white supremacy wants, the patriarchy wants, hustle culture, ableism wants. Because when we are exhausted individually and collectively as a field, we cannot fight for changes. We cannot push back. We cannot advocate. Or if we do, we barely have enough energy to sustain the fight, to keep it going, to dismantle systems of oppression. Let alone enjoy your life and really live a full life outside of your professional work. This is exactly what Trump and the anti-science administration wants everyone in public health to be so exhausted, to be so overworked, to be so burnt out that not only are you miserable, but you don't have the energy or effort to advocate, to fight back, to think critically, to think creatively, to come together and organize. That takes a lot of mental energy to do those things. And everyone in public health are so smart. We have the tools, we have the skills, we have the knowledge, we have the ability to work in communities. We understand the problems. We have everything we need to advocate, to push back. But Trump and anti-science administration knows that if we're exhausted, if we're overworking, if we're burnt out, if we're overwhelmed, if we're feeling hopeless, that's going to shut us all down because we won't have the mental or emotional energy to do any of that. That's why what we are doing this whole week is so important. Everything you're learning this week, and most importantly, implementing it, is an act of resistance. That's why this is so important and so necessary, especially right now, but at all times in public health. So let me give you an example of what this looks like. Here's Bex. She went through my program a couple of years ago, and here was her reflection on this. And she actually did a lot of health equity work in her job. We're changing systems and structures of oppression while working within them. We all need support and guidance to learn how to set boundaries and avoid overwhelm from someone who knows what it's like. That's where Marissa comes in. She can help you identify patterns that will lead to burnout. That's why this work is so important, because we are trying to change society and change the norms and change the world for the better while we are also being impacted by inequity and discrimination and systems of oppression. And I think this week highlights all of that. And that's why it's so essential we all learn how to set boundaries and how to say no and how to stop overworking and how to stop exhausting ourselves so we have the energy and capacity to do that and enjoy our life, be there for our kids, work out, live a long life, have joy, have fulfillment. So here's your daily challenge. This is the first daily challenge I'm giving you, where I'm offering you an option of choosing which thought you want to practice. So ending people pleasing takes time. That's why my program is 6 months long. When you think about how long you've been socialized to people please, if you really think about it, it's probably been your whole life. So think of how long you've lived. It's going to take longer than a week to stop people pleasing. The good news is it's not going to take 30, 40, 50 years. It's much quicker to undo that pattern and learn how to stop doing it. My program is about 6 months, and I find most people make so much progress in that time. But here's a place for you to start. I want you to pick one of these thoughts to practice that resonates most with you. One thought is about reminding you of the real purpose of a boundary. So that's the thought: boundaries are for and about me and no one else. The other thought is about reminding you that someone else's response is not your responsibility. Another person's reaction to my boundary is not my problem to solve. So I want you to write these down or screenshot them or watch the replay, and I want you to pick one to practice. And it doesn't mean you need to go tell everyone you're setting a boundary, right? But just over the next 24 hours, as you think about stepping away for your lunch or ending work on time, or something you said no to and your brain starts feeling worried and guilty and afraid, you can practice one of these thoughts. Again, as I've been saying all week, the purpose of this is not necessarily for you to believe this thought right away. The purpose is for you to, 1, build awareness of what you believe, 2, start to build the practice of taking charge of what you believe, and 3, getting curious and being a researcher of your brain. What happens when I practice this thought? Do I not believe it? Does it feel difficult? Does it help me? And then from there, you can make different shifts. So here's what happens when you start setting boundaries consistently. Some of these stats you have seen before if you've been here this week, but so many of these are directly related to setting boundaries when you really learn how to master this skill, when you really can eliminate guilt and shame and worry from setting boundaries altogether. So in about 3 months or less in my program, women really focus on this. This is one of the big components of my coaching program. And what we find is about at the 3-month mark, they have 50% more focus on family because they're setting boundaries successfully and taking their time back in their schedule. They also get 40% more mental rest. Why? Again, they're setting boundaries and they're actually using their nights and weekends for them to recover, to rest, to recharge. But the last piece I really want to highlight, because we haven't really talked about it this week, is there's actually a 25% increase in the focus on their health because they finally have more time to fit in workouts and meal planning. This also impacts sleep. So the example I've been using recently is someone who came through my program last year. She wears a Garmin watch. If you're familiar, it tracks your sleep. And it has a rating from 0 to 100. 0 being terrible, your sleep's terrible. 1 being your sleep's great. She went from a 0 to a 90, to excellent. She was able to sleep well every night and sleep long enough because she was no longer feeling stressed or worried or anxious. Some of the other health things that we've seen in our program is some of the women are losing weight, they're working out more consistently, some have started to train for marathons, having time to meal prep, stop losing the hair. For me, I know when I did this work on myself, I have psoriasis. If you're not familiar with what that is, it's kind of similar to eczema. It's a skin disorder that flares up with stress. But nothing the doctors did, nothing they prescribed me ever worked, ever. And then once I eliminated my overwhelm and my burnout and created work-life balance, all my psoriasis went away because so much of it had to do with stress. And if you go to any doctor and they tell you, have less stress, reduce your stress, and you ask them how, they have no way to answer it, right? They don't know. They just know it helps. This week and everything you're learning this week is the how to reducing your stress to get those benefits. So here's what Gina shared. She went through my program last year. And this I really wanted to share for those of you who maybe you're feeling like, yes, this makes sense, but does it really work? I'm not sure, a little hesitant, right? Which is very common, by the way. Here's what she has to share. This coaching allowed me to get in touch with my emotions. I've historically wanted to move past them rather than process them in the moment and respect my feelings as a human. I would say run, don't walk, or hesitate to invest in yourself and do this coaching. So with today's daily challenge, if you're feeling a little hesitation with practicing those thoughts, I want you to take it from Gina, right? Where she says, don't walk or hesitate, invest in yourself and do this coaching. You practicing those thoughts, are you actually practicing all these coaching tools? We're going to talk about tomorrow. Tomorrow is maybe the most important day of the challenge, so I want to set you up for success. Let's do a little check-in. What are some aha moments you're having? What are some takeaways? What are some things you're struggling with or questions you have? Drop in the chat where you're at right now with all of that. Self-worth is difficult. That's very common. And that a lot of that has to do with the socialization from systems of oppression and being in that people-pleasing cycle for a long time. So as I said, this doesn't change overnight, but you are starting the process, and you are starting the process of building that self-worth and building that trust. Prioritizing myself is an act of resistance. I love that. Yes, it totally is. When you think about it, when you feel guilty for prioritizing yourself, that is really the patriarchy talking, or white supremacy talking, or hustle culture talking. We don't look at a baby and go, gosh, you're worthless because you sleep all day. No. We believe all those things that we can't prioritize ourselves just because we've been told by systems of oppression we shouldn't. I feel hope when I get started. It's been way too many years of people pleasing. Very common. Okay, most of us have been people pleasing our whole lives because we were taught to. And I will say in some scenarios for folks, it's a survival mechanism, right? Especially growing up. If you grew up in a household where people pleasing was a survival mechanism to just survive in the family you survived in, or if you're in a workplace where people pleasing kept you safe, like that is common and we're not denying that. We just want to get us out of this people pleasing cycle that leads us to exhaustion and overwhelm. Hopeful to know that others' reactions to your boundaries are not your problem. Yes, they're not. Now, knowing that and then in the moment, not feeling bad about it are two different things, right? That's the knowledge and then like really embodying that belief. So I'm glad that it's helpful to know that others' reactions are not your problem. Now, the practice implementation piece is reminding yourself of that because some people might react, they might get upset. That is not your problem. You have to remind yourself of that. What if the issue isn't about boundaries with others, but about boundaries with yourself, wanting to prepare for disaster situations in public health and not being able to get out of that feeling of the need to prepare? Okay, so I would love to answer this question. Tell me what boundary you would want to set with yourself that you feel you can't in that context. Drop that in the chat and I'd love to help you. Biggest takeaway is that maintaining a boundary isn't an attack on someone else. Absolutely not. Now, do we have to be in community with others? I mean, are we in community in others? Of course. Are there times we might want to take into consideration other people? Sure, that can happen, right? But it's not so black and white. And our boundaries are really for us, and they should be really about us. Okay, I'm going to move forward. The person who wrote in the question about boundaries with yourself, drop the example of the boundary you want to set, and I'll come back to it because that's such a good question. Okay, tomorrow we're going to talk about how to succeed in public health right now and whatever comes the next week, the next couple weeks, the next year, the next 4 years. Okay, we're going to take everything you learned this week and talk about how do you utilize that right now with the context of public health and in the future of all the uncertainty happening politically and in public health. This is a really important part of this week's challenge. When I hit burnout, some of you know in 2017, that was basically right after Trump went into office. I used all the tools I'm teaching you this week and all the other ones that I teach in my program to get out of burnout. And they are the same tools to prevent burnout. And so not only did I get out of burnout when Trump was in office and stay out of burnout, I did not get burnt out in COVID. Not because I'm a special snowflake, just because I had the tools. And so that's how I know that these tools you're learning, the tools I teach in my program, when you implement them, when you master them, they really work for the long term. And actually recently I've been getting emails from alumni who come through my program saying, everyone else around me is freaking out and I feel really calm. Like I'm using the tools, I know I can get through this. So I've seen it even with the women who come through my program. So that's why tomorrow is really, really important.